Hi, welcome to the Wolf of Young Street podcast. My name is Victor. I'm your host. Now, you may have heard that Venezuela recently had an election, and the results of that election was declared on the 29th of July, with the incumbent president, Nicolas Maduro, declared the winner by a very narrow margin of 51% to the opposition's 44%. Obviously, almost immediately there was the opposition came out and said, "Well, that's not possible. We're sure we won that election and we won it handsomely." And obviously, since then, the country has devolved into a lot of like protests with people coming out and demanding that their voice be heard regarding what they say is a blatant rigging of the election. But I have something interesting to share with you guys today. I'm going to read you an article. And this article is from The Atlantic, and was written by a guy named Alan Taylor. It was written on April 18th, 2013. And the title of this particular article from 2013 is Venezuela's Disputed Election. And I know if some of what I'm going to read to you sounds a bit like deja vu, it's because it kind of had me thinking the same. So I thought I had to bring this into the show today. So here goes. On Sunday, Venezuela held a national election to decide who would succeed former President Hugo Chavez, who passed away last month. Chavez made it clear that he wished his vice president, Nicolas Maduro, to assume the office. Opposition leader Enrique Capriles staged a popular campaign, though, and the results of Sunday's election were very close. Maduro was declared the victor with 50.8% compared to Capriles' 49%. Capriles' supporters have been protesting all week, claiming voter fraud, with Maduro supporters staging counter demonstrations. Some of the protests have resulted in violence, with as many as 8 deaths reported so far. Okay. So, again, I'm sure this is starting to sound very familiar, not so different to what we've heard this time around. If you've been listening to the stories following the election this time around, you see that there's a lot of similarities. People complaining about irregularities from the election. But here's the thing: why do the people want Nicolas Maduro out of office, or why do they seem to want Nicolas Maduro out of office so intently? Since assuming office in 2013, Maduro has overseen really, really high inflation levels, really unprecedented even in Latin America. So as of 2022, the inflation rate was reported at 9,000%. Now that's wild, isn't it? And consider the fact that 53% of the people living in Venezuela actually live in extreme poverty. And if you're not sure what the definition of extreme poverty is, that is below $2 a day. Below $2 a day. Okay, and obviously in the last decade, about 7.5 million people have proceeded to leave that country, and this information is according to the United Nations Refugee Agency. So clearly, the people are not happy with status quo. It would appear. It seemed obviously that the people rallied behind the opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez, and hence the opposition believing that they won an overwhelming majority of the votes. So, how has Maduro responded to this? This is where it gets really funny to me. Well, if you really want to know how to rig and how to steal an election effectively, you just got to follow the playbook on this guy. Almost immediately after the elections were announced, you get some of your friends to endorse you, right? And countries like Iran, China, and Nicaragua have been quick to actually endorse Maduro and recognize Maduro's election. Now, the U.S. as of today has come out in opposition of that, to say that they believe it to be true that Maduro did lose that election, by all the evidence that has been presented to them. But obviously getting other countries like Iran, China, and Nicaragua to endorse you was a pretty interesting move. And Maduro, in his comments, basically said that the protests are an attempt at a coup d'état, and that and this time there will be no kind of weakness, he says, in his statement. And obviously he was seeing basically parading and, and basically drinking in the adulation of his supporters, you know. So how does this manage to happen? You got to think about how the people vote in Venezuela. The way they vote in Venezuela is actually an electronic system where people essentially go to the polling booth and you choose on an electronic instrument. You choose the candidate that you want for confirmation purposes and for the purposes of being able to prevent voting fraud. They're supposed to print out a receipt, a paper receipt, which then gets physically kept in a box, and this allows the votes to be obviously be ratified later on. Okay. Now, there were lots of widespread complaints about the fact that in that particular election, there were lots of polling units where the receipts did not work. But in the places that they did work, the opposition says they were able to gather enough receipts to kind of show that they did win up to 70% of the votes. Now, in the days following this election, they stormed the electoral office and obviously got hastily kicked out. Um, they stormed the electoral office and had no joy there. And since that time, a lot of the opposition has gone into a lot of the members of the opposition have gone into hiding and say they faced certain intimidation, if you know what I mean. Anyways, so how is this country going to rid themselves of this experience? If 2013 is anything to go by, with the same protests to have their votes count, it would appear nothing is going to change in 2024. It would appear that the people of Venezuela are stuck with Nicolas Maduro as their president, which is unfortunate because it does seem like these people are ready for a change. Anyways, what do you guys think about the controversial Venezuela election? What do you guys think is a possible solution for the people of Venezuela? You let me know in the chat. And if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe down below. I'll see you on the next one.